called Earl Bryan, who's now doing time in a penitentiary for mass fraud and what have you. And Earl Bryan had been very close to President Reagan and had, in fact, worked for him.
And actually, Gordon, I worked for a brief period of time for Earl Bryan.
Right. So you know a bit about
in the 80s, yes, I do. I worked for him just before he went to prison.
Right.
He owned several television networks back
That's
then.
right.
He owned the Learning Channel, and he owned...
he's a clever guy, no question.
The Financial News channel that later was sold to CNBC.
Well, that's the man. Well, now what happened? At the time, he had a company called Hadron. And this company was a specialist company, so Rafi used this company to test out if the trapdoor would work. And they ran the test against their neighbor, Jordanian intelligence, and it did work. But both Ari Ben-Menashe and Rafi Eitan came to the same conclusion very quickly. Earl Bryan, for all his brilliance and willingness and all this stuff, did not have the resources that they wanted. And they said one word. Robert said, Ben-Menashe and Rafi completely said, Maxwell. He's the man. So Maxwell was hauled in, and he immediately saw for himself this was a wonderful chance to make money. And he didn't understand software at that stage, but my goodness me, he was on a fast learning curve. And he set off to sell Promis, which was the name of the software. And the ironic thing is, and the cheeky thing is, that Rafi Eitan decided, and this is what really, really does tick off poor old Bill Hamilton, is this. Rafi Eitan decided, I'll keep that name Promis. It's such a good name for selling. And so he stole it. He stole the name as well.
And he actually sold it as Promis.
Oh, yeah, it's still sold as Promis. Now, he went off around the world. Maxwell then became not just super spy, but ultra super salesman. He went off round the world, and he pulled it off brilliantly.
Gordon, briefly explain to our listeners why Mossad wanted Maxwell to sell this Promis software to other government agencies around the world. He sold it, I guess, to Canada and European nations. What was Mossad's hidden motive in getting this Promis software into the government computers of other nations?
Well, very simply, it gave Mossad an inside track view of what was happening when everybody was using Promis. Sitting in Tel Aviv, Rafi Eitan and his technicians would know exactly what was going on in those departments, in those people using it. For instance, excuse me. For instance, when they were he saw, and by the way, Eitan didn't just say the government's big, but government's small. For instance, he went to his first client was Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, and he told Mugabe how to use it to track white farmers who may be plotting against him. It's very simple how it works, yet very, very complex. With a piece of paper, once, I'm sure Bill Hamilton has said it much better than me, but with a single piece of paper, you can pretty well track anybody, that person's life, where he's done, his phone calls and so on. It's like a never-widening ripple that goes on, and the information is just priceless when it comes back, because it's all sorted and coded for you and decoded and so on. Well, what he was able to do, by selling it, for instance, he would go to the Russians and say, you need this to keep track of what your little friends in the Soviet satellites are doing, and Qryan said, you're absolutely right. And Maxwell would demonstrate it, and the Russians, KGB, would have it. But what they didn't realize, sitting in Tel Aviv, there were people listening to what the KGB were doing. It became extraordinary because Maxwell enabled the Israelis, who survived by the simple premise that knowledge is all, and the more knowledge, the more all-powerful you are. They were able to listen into the Syrians. Maxwell sold it at cut-price lots to the Egyptians. He sold it everywhere.
I have a feeling, Gordon, that this Promis, the early version of Promis, I have a feeling that it is most likely the foundation for DARPA's new Total Information Awareness data mining program that Poindexter's setting up in the Pentagon. Because
no doubt.
That's what they're going to do. They're going to track every electronic transaction and communication of every person in the United States. And I just have a good feeling that Promis was the foundation for this Super Snoop software.
It was, and the ironic thing is this: Mr. Hansen, the renegade rogue FBI agent, he passed it to his Russian controllers, rather, and he got money for it, of course, and they sold it to bin Laden. And I have just done an op-ed piece on this, because today bin Laden has survived because, and Hamilton has confirmed this to me as well, because he has a version of Promis which enables him to be ahead of us when we're looking for him. You see, the advantage is, with this Promis system, you can do the most astonishing things, and this is a terrifying thing. I'm sure Bill Hamilton told you this, how efficient it is. It is reckoned to be, within the intelligence world, perhaps the most priceless piece of software ever created, and it's still so valuable today. But bin Laden has a copy now. Now, Hansen sold it to the BND, which is German external intelligence. They only became suspicious something wrong was with it only after 9/11, when they realized that something was happening to their intelligence intercepts. And they said, we don't know, but we think there's something wrong here. And it was, of course, another version of the trapdoor. Because after Maxwell had sold it everywhere, news of the trapdoor leaked in Canada when Ben Menashe, who lives in Montreal, was picked up and questioned about this and his involvement.
Gordon, was the CIA aware of the trapdoor? Or
not initially, because they were building their own version of Promis, which they'd also got from Justice.
So this went for years with only the Israeli Mossad knowing about the trapdoor.
The death of Hamza bin Laden.
I can't comment about that, but he was very threatening to our country. He was saying very bad things about our country. I will let you make your own comment about it, but I don't comment. But I will say, Hamza bin Laden was very threatening to our country, and you can't do that. But as far as anything beyond that, I have no comment.
Moves include that the head of the reform movement in Israel, Rabbi al-Askari, left the Labour Party yesterday to join the Democratic camp, which is a merged party of former Prime Minister Ehud Barak's Israel Democratic Party, Meretz, and fellow former Labour member Stab Shafir. And far-right parties Noam and Otzma Yehudit disbanded. We told you yesterday that the two parties had agreed to run together in the elections. However, today, the anti-LGBT party said they will not run with the Kach-associated party after a recent disagreement. The U.S. Senate is considering legislation urging the State Department to explore the benefits of a joint cybersecurity research facility with the State of Israel. The U.S.-Israel Cybersecurity Center of Excellence Act was presented yesterday by Democratic Nevada Senator Jacky Rosen, co-led by Republican South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds. Rosen said this bipartisan legislation would help us take much-needed steps towards establishing a joint cybersecurity research center with Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East, and a major hub for new and emerging cybersecurity technologies. She said, I will continue working on forward-thinking policies that defend our nation from cyber threats and strengthen our key national security alliances.